Jackie, I am super duper excited to have you kicking off the Millionaires podcast series. You have such an amazing story, and we are going to jump right into it. So why don't we just start at the beginning, where you tell people a little bit about where you're from and what your upbringing was like?
Woohoo! Yeah, I'm glad to be the first one. I am originally from South Carolina and Georgia, so I come from a very nice, warm climate, and now I'm living in cold Ohio, and we're chatting in January. So we got snow on the ground, and it's like 20 something degrees. So I miss the South right about now. Um,
Yes, it's
so
lovely down
yeah,
here.
so, yeah, so growing up in the South, I was in like the rural South. Like we lived down a dirt road. I was raised by a single dad with six kids, and to this day, I still don't know how he did it. But he was a hardworking dad, and he made sure there was food on the table. He provided for us, but the main thing I was remember was that, money was always short. Like we never
Mm.
had enough. And that was something that stuck with me my whole life. And I think part of, my story is that the whole time I was running away from poverty and I never wanted to be in poverty again.
So tell me what that feeling is, the never having enough. Is there something that stands out from a memory standpoint of, you know, hunger or something particular
Yeah.
that was the not enough?
I think one of the main things was that I knew my I knew my dad got paid on Thursdays. And the way I remember that is that the refrigerator pretty much was empty on Thursdays before he got home. And we couldn't wait till he got home. So he was able to buy enough groceries and have enough food just until the next paycheck came in. So you talk about living from paycheck to paycheck, bad enough if you have to do it yourself. But if you're doing that for a family of seven, that's really hard. Then I had some brothers too. So of course they're snatching everything out of the refrigerator before I could. So that's the one thing that stuck with me. I mean, we knew until dad got home on Thursday, there really wasn't anything to eat. So
Yeah, that definitely would be a memory that would stick with you, and the idea of not having enough as it pertains to that memory.
yeah.
With the siblings in the household, what was it like from a money conversation standpoint? What do you feel like your siblings would have a similar kind of memory as you, or they say something different? What do you think their money upbringing or thoughts would be?
I mean, I think they probably did. So it was six of us, and I was number five out of six. So I had one younger sister, Gwen, and she was about a year and a half younger than me. But I think for the most part, we kind of had the same experience. We lived in like it was, this sounds crazy, but this was a two-bedroom ranch home that seven of us lived in. Like there was one bedroom was me and my sisters. It was four girls, and there was two twin beds. So two of us slept in one bed, me and Gwen, and two slept in another bed. And then my dad had his room, and then my brothers they took half of the main room, and there was a bed there. So we all knew that everything was scarce and everything had to be shared amongst all of us.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, we kind of got used to it growing up that way, but as you get older, you start to realize, why does everybody else have the new jeans on, and how does everybody else, get a car so soon, and things like that.
Yeah, definitely can relate to the idea of like like, wait a minute, there's a difference
Yeah,
between what I have and what my peers or what the people at school are having, et cetera. Was there a
yeah.
point at which you all decided to, or had to chip in for the family? Did you get a job pretty early on, or what was your first means of income?
Yeah, I was so glad to get a job. I got a job when I was 17. Of course, my older siblings, they started getting jobs too. And that did two things. So it put money in our pocket, but also it kind of relieved things for my dad. Now, the kids that was working, they was able to somewhat, support themselves or, help out with the family a little bit. But I remember my first job was when I was in 11th grade in high school. I went to Civil Love High School, and I got my first job at Shoney's. So if you live in the South, you've heard of Shoney's, and I was a waitress there. And I remember exactly what I got paid, which was $2.01 an hour. And
Wow.
yes, that was it. And that's what waitresses got paid back then. And then you count the tips. And I still have that first paycheck. You have those memory books when you're in high school and you put all the little things you want to remember in. I was looking through that the other day, and it was $2 per hour. And then you would put your tips on there. And the ladies who already worked there, the other waitresses, they told me, you don't report all of your tips,
Right.
so you won't get taxed on it. So that was my first job, and I was at Shoney's for about a year. But man, it made me feel like I was rich, really, because I had a paycheck every week. I could go shopping, buy clothes, and all of a sudden I went from wearing these ratty hand-me-down jeans to being fly every single week. And so that felt good to me, so much so to where I ended up getting best dressed in high school, and whew, that meant a lot to me. But yeah, those were kind of the early memories, in school and my first job and everything.
What about the idea of, like now as an adult looking back on that experience of, not having resources versus having resources? Do you feel like it created maybe some negative money habits for you or positive money habits from, having to work with very little to like, oh, I'm rich because I have a job and I now have these resources coming in?
Yeah, I think temporarily it did. But for me, so I obviously was spending on clothes, hanging out with my friends a lot, treating everybody and things like that. But it was a very quick wake up call before I realized that, oh, I gotta start, making sure that I have enough for a week from now, or a month from now, or years from now. So when I was in high school, I graduated from high school in May of '88, and my dad passed away about 3 months before March of
Mm.
'88. So that was a big wake up call. And I had to grow up really quick. And I was basically on my own at 18. So I
Wow.
had to figure out, how do I get through school? How do I pretty much support myself? And so those questions were looming for me. And I didn't come from a rich family. So I didn't have anyone, kind of giving me tuition money or anything like that. I had to figure out how to fill out, the financial aid forms, which I don't think the FAFSA even existed back then. But I had to figure out how to fill out all that stuff because I was also the first person in my family to graduate, to go to college and to graduate from college. So I didn't have my older siblings saying, oh, let me show you how to do this, or let me help you fill this out, or here's how you need to, make sure that you are able to get a scholarship or things like that. So what I ended up doing when I got to college is doing what my dad taught, no matter what, he always worked his butt off. So I inherited his work ethic. And so I was taught, if you want something, the way to pay for it is that you work. So I'm thinking I'm doing the right thing, following in the footsteps of my dad, working multiple jobs while I was in school, always a full-time and a part-time job. So like 50 plus hours a week. Plus I'm taking a full load at school. Like back then it was 3 to 4 classes.
Wow.
So obviously something had to give. Yeah, I guess at 20, we have these superpowers, right? So I thought I was able to juggle it all, but Lauryn, something had to give. So what had to give was my grades. And I did graduate from college, but I think in order to graduate, you had to have a 2.5 GPA. And when I graduated, I had a 2.6. So I barely got through college, but I was so glad. It's like, whew, the GPA is not on my degree.
Right. Exactly. All they're going to see is that I have this piece of paper. I earned it. And oh boy, did I earn it.
Exactly. And that was, I guess the first step, or the first tangible step I made towards trying to ensure that I would never be in poverty again. So I knew that once I got that degree, I would have a better chance of getting a higher paying job, and that I could create some type of like stability and financial, I guess, just being more financially whole to where I wouldn't have to worry about reverting back into poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So tell me a little bit about what did happen after you got out of college, because I think sometimes too, we have these grandiose ideas of, if I get this degree, it's going to change everything for me and I'm going to be rich. And, it definitely has some value, but how did it play itself out for you from a value standpoint? And what was the next kind of money lesson that you bumped into as a college graduate?
Yeah, I mean, I can say that it helped. My big dreams, when we're all in college and high school, we'll have big dreams. I wanted to be a news reporter, right? I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to write. I wanted to be a broadcaster. Like that's what I wanted to do. Now, while I was in school, one of the jobs that I had was that I was working for Walmart. I did multiple things, but towards the end, I was doing office work. And I don't really remember how it came about, but once I graduated, my first real job out of college in my major, communications, and things like that, was working for Walmart headquarters in Bentonville, Arkansas. So by working for them when I was in college, somehow that translated into creating an opportunity for me when I graduated. Now, I did have to move far, far away from home because here I am in Georgia and South Carolina, and I'm moving all the way to Arkansas. But at the time, I felt like, I didn't have the luxury to turn down the job. It paid decent. And, there's people around me that, wasn't able to get a job in their field. So I just remember all Walmart would pay for when they moved you back then. I don't know if they've changed it, but they will get you cover the cost of a Ryder truck and this little hatch to like hitch. It's a hitch to hitch your car to it, right? So of course, I've only ever driven like a small two-door car, and now I got to drive this big Ryder truck with my car hooked in the back. And I didn't have all this family support where, somebody was gonna, help me do all this and drive with me and all that. It was just me. Now, my brother, Charles, he did help me, hook the car up to the Ryder truck, and he helped guide me backing out of the driveway. And that was about it. Then from then on out, I remember that day because it was raining and tears was coming down my eyes. And it was like one of the hardest things I had ever done. And it took me 2 days to drive. I remember spending the night somewhere. And by the end of the trip, I was feeling pretty good. I was like riding high with all the other truckers and stuff. And so I got to Arkansas, and that was, my first real job out of college working for Walmart headquarters, which turned out to be a pretty good thing. Living in Northwest Arkansas, was not a whole lot of diversity, not a whole lot going on, but I had a job with a solid paycheck. And I felt secure, after a few months. I was kind of lonely because I didn't know anybody. I moved away from my home and everybody that I knew. But so and I'm sure that I wouldn't have gotten that job, had it not been for getting my degree. So I guess I have to say, it did its job in making sure that I could get, a decent job. My dad always said, get a good job with benefits. And that's what I did to start out.
So you nailed it right out of school, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll say that, but it was a good start. It was a good start.
Well, I think you just shared a bunch of really good lessons with us about the idea of, all these things that we don't know. And it is life. It is adulting that they're just coming our way constantly. I also remember my first time I got in a U-Haul truck and nobody helped me back up. So I still have the car that has the dent in it from, because you have to turn the car a certain way to get the U-Haul, the trailer.
Right.
Yeah, I tore my car up. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I wasn't the only one. All right. I did. So kudos to my brother for helping guide me out and doing the best that he could. But yeah, that was a big moment in my life. I was so young and going off by myself. It was scary.
Yeah, we take for granted how the simple little things that we don't know can scare us to the point of paralysis or maybe not, doing something that we want to do. But also getting over that fear and moving forward. Like you said, by the end of the trip, you're riding high and, it's a whole life skill that, you drove into Arkansas with some confidence that maybe you didn't have previously that road trip gave you. So,
yeah, that's true. True.
All right. So tell us what kind of happens next in this story. We're in Arkansas. We're lonely. How does I guess maybe before we start talking about what kind of happens next, like you said, you got benefits, you have a good job. Was it hard kind of navigating, the understanding of what it meant to get a paycheck from this particular situation? And was there, benefits and you're like, I don't know what this life insurance or 401k or those sorts of things. Do you have any memories of things like that with the first job?
Yeah, I had to figure it all out because nobody talked to me about the money part, like the whole time. The main takeaway that I had from growing up about money was that it wasn't enough. But I remember when I moved to Arkansas, I did not have, the student loans were due because I did have a little bit of student loans. I know I didn't take out a student loan until my senior year. I was okay because I was living with my brother part of the time. And then, he had the nerve to get married, and then I had to move out, and then I had to pay my own rent. So I was lucky that my student loans were reasonable, but when you're moving across country and you're having to get, a new apartment and pay a deposit for utilities and all that stuff, you don't hardly have any money. So I remember that the student loans were due, and I had so much anxiety around that. And I'm like, I can't pay my student loans. So I think I was able to call, and they told me that I had 6 months. I didn't even know I had a 6-month grace period. So they told me on the phone.
Hallelujah.
I'm like, yeah, that means a lot. That means a lot. And right before I moved, I had started dating my husband, which, we ended up, getting married. But he helped me with getting the utilities on and things like that. So I don't know what I would have done had it not been for that. And we're talking small dollars, Lauryn. This might have been like $500 or $600 just to put deposits and utilities, but I didn't even have that because I was just living paycheck to paycheck, and that's kind of what I knew. So by the time I got to Arkansas, got an apartment, got the utilities on, got a grace period to pay back my student loans, I was kind of stable. And I did end up getting married. My husband was in the military. So he was, I think he was deployed part of the time. So he wasn't in Arkansas with me. But when he did get out of the military, we were more concerned about his career than mine. So we up and moved to Ohio, which, as you can see, I'm still here. We moved to Ohio mainly for his career, but since I work for Walmart, Walmart is a huge company. So I simply just transferred to a different location that was in the Ohio area. And as soon as I got to Ohio, I learned that I was pregnant. So I had my daughter the same year, well, maybe 9 months after we moved here. I found out I was pregnant, and 9 months after that, that's when I had my daughter. I've got one daughter, and that kind of changed things. So now we're this little happy family. And I was with my husband for about 11 years, and we ended up getting a divorce. And so that was another huge wake up call, a huge, moment of truth. What I thought was going to be a shared journey, I now had to do on my own as a single mom and make sure that I was okay, that my daughter was okay. And so this inflection point in my life was like critical because, the first thing that pops in my mind is I don't want to be in poverty again. And does this mean that I'm going to have to struggle again? And am I going to be able to make it? So I'm asking myself all these questions. So it wasn't just the divorce and the marriage, it was, my whole future, and, where was I going to land? So that was a big moment.
How would you describe your financial literacy at the time of your divorce?
Not good, not good at all. And I say that because during the divorce, basically there's a process called quadro where they take the retirement money and they split it down the middle. And I ended up I had $20,000 in my 401k. And I thought I was doing pretty good. And I was just doing the company match. That's all I knew to do. Somebody at work probably told me I was doing the match. Now, during the time of the divorce, when we're looking at my husband's retirement account, his 401k, he had $120,000. So he had $100,000 more than me. And we were both making about the same salary, getting a similar match. So I just couldn't understand how there was such a big disparity. Now I've since sort of pieced it together. I did a little sleuthing, and now all the things that I know about finances and investing, like he worked for a major bank, and part of his 401k was stock in that bank. And this was like, 2001, 2002, 2003. And the banks were probably one of the best asset classes there were. So, that helped him a lot. And there was just a few other things. I was invested in different things. So that made me feel so stupid. It made me feel like I should have known. We didn't go over our finances together. I had no idea. I had no idea. And I vowed from that point on that I would never want to feel that financially ignorant again. So that was probably the biggest thing. And so, yeah, my financial literacy, my financial knowledge at that point was very low.
So I just want to, pause here because this is the Millionaires podcast series on Worth Listening, and just kind of summarize what I've heard up to this point. So, born and raised in poverty, took yourself to high school. I mean, from high, took yourself through college. Was married for 11 years. So you're an adult at this point. If we just do some basic math, I don't know, I might probably leaving out some years in the story, but 18 when you go to college plus 11, we're 29 at least. So you're 30 years old already, and you realize that you don't have very much financial literacy. You don't have very much saved. You might have been slightly older than that, but I just to get a little bit ahead of myself, I know that you became a millionaire by 47. So catch us up on how the tables turned and things just like, woo, what happened, girl?
So when I got divorced, I think I was around 32, 34ish or something like that. It took a year and a half to get the divorce done. But after sort of getting myself well, like emotionally, it is so taxing going through a divorce, especially when you have children. So I had to take the time to pull myself together before I could like hold my head up and ask that all important question, what now? What am I interested in? What do I want to do? So that's when I ended up finding an investment club. And the way I found out about the investment clubs is I was talking to a coworker. She was in Boston and I was here in Ohio. And she was telling me about this organization called Better Investing. And she says, oh yeah, they support investment clubs all over the country. I'm sure they have one in Ohio. You should go Google it. So I Googled it and I found this investment club. So that was probably the very first step I took to go towards, enlightening myself around my finances and investing. And I figured out I was very interested in the stock market. I was very interested in investing. And to find a group of people that were also interested in investing, I was very attracted to them and in this club. So that's where that created sort of the foundation to a lot of the things that I did in terms of investing and really my finances overall. So I just remember the first time I never even knew what a net worth statement was. And my first time doing a net worth statement, I was 38 years old. And it made so much sense to me, but you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So when I love the idea of a net worth statement because, it gives you an overall picture of everything you got going on financially. So it helped me to put things in perspective and to start to strategize because I remember, this was told to me in the context of a job, like you can't manage what you can't measure. Right. But to me, that applies to your own life and your financial life. So how can I manage my finances when I don't even, if I don't even know where I'm starting, if I don't even know, where things are at. So that was probably one of the most powerful exercises I have ever done with my finances is doing a net worth statement.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I don't think it's something that we talk about enough. We talk about gathering wealth and becoming wealthy and rich. And, we talk about numbers such as 1 million, but really the path to get there is financial organization. And I think that the net worth piece of it is a really, really telling part of it. So can you just tell the audience a little bit about how you would figure out what your net worth is if you've never done that before?
Yeah, so I did it using a spreadsheet because Personal Capital and some of the other apps weren't even around back then. And basically you take your assets. So those are things like, your 401k, your IRA, your HSA, everything that you own, and then you subtract the debts that you have or things that are your liabilities. So the mortgage on my home, if I had, debt on a car, if there were student loans, then I would deduct it. So when I first did it, it was pretty easy. I had pretty much taken care of all the debt. And the only thing I had was my home that had still, and I still have a mortgage on my home, but So that was the only thing. And I just like to keep things simple. So, I know you're supposed to have like two columns, assets and liabilities. And since I didn't really have, any liabilities except the home, I just took the equity in my home and I added that to all my other assets. And that's how I ended up, with my net worth. And so even though, Lauryn, I had no idea what I was doing, I did the match. Right after I got divorced, I felt like I was behind, and I started going, a little bit harder at, like adding more to my retirement account, doing my HSA and things like that. So by the time I did it, I was almost halfway to my goal of, $1 million net worth. And for a long time, that number didn't even really mean anything to me. But I was very shocked as I'm pulling together and I guess that's a really fun activity too, right? Pulling together all of your accounts, because I just never thought of them as a whole. I got a Roth IRA here, I got a little bit of my HSA, a little bit of my 401k, and that stuff starts adding up. So it made me feel, I'm pumping my chest out as I'm doing this, right? When I'm pulling these things together, and the numbers aren't looking too bad. So this made me feel a little bit better that I guess the only thing that was negative that I felt about it was that a lot of this retirement money felt so far away. It didn't feel like it was something that I could use and enjoy today. And so it didn't really even feel like mine. So I remember thinking oh, I don't know if I need to count my 401k, that's for retirement. So kind of going through this and realizing that, this is part of your net worth, and, this gets added in too.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I think you bring up a really good point about like the various mindsets that exist, and the idea that sometimes, like I said, people are just like, oh, this is the money that I can't touch, or this money doesn't exist for XYZ reason, when it is actually a part of the overall process and the pot. And while it has a barrier, a guardrail up to kind of keep you from making bad decisions, the 59.5 is what I'm referring to for the 401k.
Right.
That's
the number we all remember.
Right. It is still very relevant in the overall accounting of, what you have and what you have something to what you have to work with, I guess, if you will. So the path you hit the $1 million net worth at 47. What were kind of the things that happened from that age 32 to 47 that did you do something differently? Like you said, you mentioned like kind of increasing the 401k, increasing the HSA. Some people are probably thinking, well, she was making $500,000 a year. Of course she should have,
yeah, I did some very
about, how did you get there in a normal person's way that, it might inspire the audience?
Well, I did some very different things. Like I said, the investment club was sort of my baseline and my introduction to making me feel more comfortable about investing in the stock market. And that's what you needed to do to get your money growing, that compound growth. So understanding that made a lot of sense to me, and why I should be, first of all, taking full advantage of all of my tax advantage accounts, because you get two benefits, right? You get the tax benefit, whether it's on the front end or the back end, and you get the benefit of investing that money and having it grow. So not only did I, just do the company match or do a little something, I really like tripled down on it, right? I started maxing out all of those accounts. So I was maxing out my 401k, which, roughly was about 19,000. I started maxing out my health savings account. And because I was a single mom, I was able to max it out to the family amount. And that was, let's say, around 7,000. And again, this is almost a 10-year period. So of course it changes. The other thing was the Roth IRA. I started maxing out my Roth IRA, which was around 6,000. And then my investment club, I was putting about $100 a month in that. And, that's nominal, but, the education that, I was getting from this club was probably more valuable than anything else. So I was maxing out all of those accounts, putting a little bit in my daughter's 529 as well. But I was doing this on a pretty, depends on who you are, whether you think it's a modest salary or it's a good salary. But when I went back and I looked like the last 10 years that I worked for my company, and the average amount was $80,000 a year. Now, on the low end, it might have been like around 60, 65. On the high end, maybe around 90, 95. But I never made over six figures. And that was something that I really wasn't trying to make the most, because here I am, a single mom. I'm trying to take care of my daughter. I could have taken a job that I got paid a lot more, but then that might have meant that I needed to travel more, or there would be more demands. And as a single mom, I didn't want that. My most important thing was to have some time with my daughter, try to leave work at work. I could have probably done a similar role to what I was doing, except be out like in the field. And I knew that I would get paid a lot more, but that's not the path I wanted to do. And so I decided to figure out how to do more with what I had versus simply making more. I mean, I did pretty good. I mean, from where I grew up, to me, this was a really, really good salary. But people that live in New York City or San Francisco, they would laugh at me making $80,000 a year, right?
I mean, they could laugh, but I think ultimately what you just hit home on was the real gem is organizing your finances to live within your means, and deciding what that means to you versus letting society decide what that means. Because what I just heard you say was like, on average, 80K. So, we always have this six-figure number, like, oh, if I could just get to six figures, my life is going to be different. I get that all the time with clients. If I could just get a little bit more money, then, yes, more can help. But if you make the most of what you have, so you talked about maxing out retirement, 19,000, roughly 20,000. So we go 80,000. You're working with 60K on a regular basis, and you're a single mom. So you're taking care of a child on this 60K of income. And, like you said, while Ohio is a lower cost of living place, you made a pretty big decision. I think most people are thinking like, well, I gotta stretch all these dollars to do all these things in the household. And you also talked about the idea of like work-life balance. And so it's like, you can stretch all these dollars to do all these things within the household, or you can, say, hey, this is our budget, this is what we're working with, but the time is more valuable than the things I'm going to be buying for you, daughter of mine that I love, and the experiences that I want to give you by, us actually having time together. So I'm hearing you say that, this is absolutely possible for somebody on the other end who is listening to this right now, that has come from humble beginnings. And you didn't do it at, like I said, age 70. You did it at age 47.
Right. So. And Lauryn, I just had to learn how to work smarter and do smarter things with my money. Like, the 401k, that was just one piece of it. So I was living off of less than 60,000 because I was maxing out my health savings account, and I was maxing out my Roth IRA. And this was primarily within that 10-year window from 38 to 47. I was maxing out all of these accounts, but what it was doing, and some of these things you don't realize until you look back, but what I was doing, especially because of the health savings account, and I was doing a traditional 401k, that significantly lowered my taxable income. Mm-hmm. So the way I was looking at it is, instead of the money going to the IRS, I was rerouting that money back to me into my investments. So that makes so much more sense to me to be smarter with my taxes. And I finally went back to I looked at, I would do TurboTax. I went back and looked at, my taxes from like the last 10 years or so. And when I realized how low my tax rates were, I'm like, why didn't I realize this, when I was doing it? But that made a big difference. I would have been paying a lot more in taxes had I not been contributing to these accounts and sort of rerouting that money from the IRS to me and my investments.
I love it. I love it. I love it, because so many people talk about the idea of being tax sensitive, or, they come to a financial planner like, I need a tax strategy. I need tax efficiency. And there's some really basic things that people can be doing to lower their tax liability. And like you said, rerouting that money back to themselves. So that's a really good point. Yeah. So tell us where you are now. Are you, retired, living on a yacht, traveling the world? Got all these grandiose ideas of what a millionaire does. So.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is that the daughter is grown and she is good. I was glad that I was able to give her an environment where it was okay to talk about finances. It wasn't taboo. She's done with college. She's got her own career in graphic design. She's a brilliant young lady. So she doesn't really need me anymore in terms of financial support. So for me, once I retired from my corporate job, and, I'm learn so much from the fire movement and consider myself part of the fire movement because they also helped me with sort of fleshing out the numbers that I needed and organizing my finances and knowing what numbers were important and the things that I needed to look at. So I basically, did that 25 times my expenses. So I hit the $1 million mark at I was 47, but at that point I did not retire. So oddly enough, my fire number was $1 million because my average expenses were 40,000 times 25 is $1 million. But I still wasn't ready to retire because I just wasn't comfortable with it. I needed a little bit more of a cushion. So I worked 2 more years before I retired. So my exact retirement date was December 2019. So it's been right at 2 years since I left my corporate job. And mostly the why was very, very important to me. My why was because of financial literacy and education. And I started to really embrace that is my life's work. Because when I think about like how I grew up in poverty, hardworking dad, living paycheck to paycheck, but doing the best he can, and how I grew up in that environment and still managed to graduate college, to learn about my finances, understand how money worked, understand investing. It just made such a huge difference in my life where it brought me all the way to the point where I became financially independent and I retired early from my corporate job. Like when I think about that from where I started, it is quite amazing. And I'm like, I know that there's many more people that grew up the same way I did, grew up in poverty, that could do this as well or move towards becoming financially independent and moving the needle. And so I might have to be that voice to do it because I've been there. So a lot of the communities that I work with, they look like me. They grew up in similar situations. I think about rural poverty a lot because I just remember, there's no public transportation. We lived out in the country. So I couldn't even walk to the library if I wanted to. I couldn't even catch the bus. So there's just some unique things there, but there's just so many other people that I know probably started where they were struggling and just never thought that it was even possible for them to move the needle. And I know that there is, and it just made such a huge difference in my life and created such a transformation that I want to pass that on. I want to share that, and I want to bring as many other people up that I possibly can. So I figured that is my life's work. So leaving my corporate job, had a great boss, great coworkers, great company, and all of that. But my life's work is something that I'll be doing like for the rest of my life.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And so in the financial literacy space, what does your work consist of now?
Right now I'm in a master's program, so I'm learning from that. But I have learned that no matter what space you're in, there's always work that you could be doing. So the school that I go to at Kansas State, we have something called PowerCat Financial, which is a financial wellness program or center really for students at the university. So I'm a part of that. I still do like financial education or financial literacy workshops for companies or schools. Right now, I'm not proactively trying to get these gigs, but it's through word of mouth.
They find you.
I will do it. There's a lot of volunteers, but I always make sure it aligns with me. I serve on a couple of boards, all organizations around, financial literacy or financial education that I support and I believe in. So I get to sort of pick and choose. And though my priority is trying to get done with this master's program, right, with a 4.0, but I'm still able to do many other things. And I think, we sort of create a name for ourselves. And even though I was, while I was working for corporate America, I probably spent the last 5 or 6 years still doing things around financial literacy. So now people know me as a financial literacy girl, and you can bring her in and she knows everything there is to know about finances, which is probably not true, but if they feel that way about me, then that's great. So I am always finding ways that I can make an impact. And right now I am working on myself, moving towards, getting this master's degree, going toward certain credentials in the field that will, I guess I feel like it will just enhance my skills and make me a better practitioner, or just a better steward in working with people overall. So I'm trying to keep it light right now as I finish school, but no matter what space I'm in, I always am finding ways to, educate people on their finances and in some way to give back.
Yes, what I'm hearing is retired, but not relaxing as of yet. Still a lot
Yeah.
more passion, a lot more projects.
Yeah, you know what, Lauryn? I would say a few months ago, I found myself really being a little more busy than I really wanted to. And, when I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, I am. Why is that? And why don't I feel bad about it? And I feel like even though sometimes I may feel like I'm working more than I did when I had a corporate job, the difference is that these are things that I have said yes to. These are the things that I want to do. And I just come with a different level of energy and motivation and spirit that, I might not have had at work. So it just feels different that I'm doing it for myself and I've designed this.
It sounds like you're describing that financial freedom people refer to so often. It's like, it's a word, but like, what does it feel like? And
right. It's a big emotion and feeling more than just the dollars. Because the way when I was younger, growing up in poverty, I probably never would have said this, but the way I see money now is that a lot of times it's an obstacle that's keeping us from doing what we want to do. Oh, you want to travel. Oh, you want to do this or that. And if the money is not there, and that's the reason why you can't do it or pursue it, then it becomes an obstacle. So by having, enough money or getting to financial independence, I just remove that obstacle. Now I can do the things that I want to do and not worrying about this big boulder in front of me that's preventing me from doing the things that I want to do.
I love it. I love it. I love it. This has been an excellent podcast. I am so happy to have you kicking off the Millionaire podcast series. We are going to wrap up with what I like to call the final sprint. We're putting a little twist on it for my regular listeners, so I'm not asking my normal questions. I actually had a bunch of people write in when I talked about doing this Millionaire series, and I asked them what questions should I be asking the people that come on the show. So we are going to do our final sprint with questions that have come from the audience. So just short answers about whatever you feel. Keep it light. What frugal things do you still do?
Ooh, frugal things. Oh, my daughter would probably have a laundry list. What frugal things do I still do? Growing up in poverty, you do a lot of things stick with you. Gosh, there's just so much. I still look at the price of things at the grocery store. I remember when me and my daughter would go shopping, right? It seems like every other week you would have one of the name brand cereals on sale. So I would never let her buy the cereal that wasn't on sale. I'm like, no, that'll be on sale next week. It's only going to be like a 50 cent or dollar difference. But just in my mind is knowing that next week is going to be less. You can wait. It's going to just sit in the pantry for a week anyway. So I still do that. It's a little thing, but I just think I'm wired that way, right? I'm wired that way.
I mean, those dollars add up. It is a thing. All right. What common money advice do you actually despise? What is out there that the world is giving that you're like, ugh, cringeworthy every time?
I think to hold off on investing. And I say that because, a big part of growing your money is the time that it's in the market. And I'm not saying that you ignore all of your debts and you invest. I'm not even saying that you split it 50-50. But when you're at the beginning of sort of your wealth building journey and you've got like competing priorities like debt and whether to, invest or pay off your debts, I think you can do both. And I think on the front end, you're sort of in this habit forming, um, wealth accumulation mode. So even if you're just doing $1 a month, you're creating the habit so that when you make more, you'll invest more. So that's the way that I put it. I just don't want you doing nothing. Even if you do $1, that means you're setting up the automation, you're getting used to it, you're able to see the money growing. And so, just split it up as you pay off more of your debt and you have a bigger salary, then you'll start to increase that. So yeah, the whole advice of, don't invest, pay off your debts, pay off your debts. It's just rarely all or none anyway, but that's how I like to approach it.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Something you did along your journey that most people are unwilling to do or afraid to try.
I have to say, Lauren, I think it's the investing part. I still run into people all the time that are so afraid of investing.
Mm.
And when I start to, and for me, yeah, I learned about the index funds and things like that. And that's a simple way to do it. But I'm also the nerd that's very interested in individual stocks and analyzing companies and looking at PE ratios and growing sales and growing earnings. And it became kind of fun for me. I'm not an active trader where I trade all the time, but I'm an active investor. Like I vote my proxy. I've gone to shareholders meetings. I've been on quarterly earnings call. And some of the things that's honestly on the ballot for these shareholders meeting is really interesting. Like some retail facing companies, like let's say Walmart, it seems like they always have something on the ballot that says, where one of the shareholders have said, we would like an hourly employee to be on the board. And the proxy has a recommendation of the board. And the recommendation of the board, of course, is always, we suggest that you vote no on having an hourly person on board. I'm like, I don't think I'm going along with that. And I'm checking off, yeah, I think there should be an hourly person. So it's just a sense of power and ownership by owning individual companies and knowing how they operate and actually being interested in their business that I really like. But so many people are very, very afraid to, one thing, investing in index funds, but another thing, if you're talking about, looking at individual companies, but, I'm just that nerd.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. Last one is, why are you not worried about people knowing about your $1 million net worth status?
That's a good one. Why
Yes.
am I not worried about it? Okay. So, I think at first I was, right? Because, money is taboo to talk about. Or some people see that $1 million as a whole lot of money and they're hitting you up, right? Oh, you need to give me a little bit of that. I think my reason is that, if I've been able to get to this point, shame on me if I keep that close to the chest and not share with others how I did it. And it becomes kind of exhilarating just to kind of openly talk about money and to not make it be such a taboo thing. So probably all in the name of financial literacy and financial education. It's like, okay, here's my wallet. You can look in it.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Hallelujah. I love it. I know I said that was the last one, but that was the last one from the listeners. We always close out with the same last question for everyone. So, what is one thing that you would like to improve about your finances in the upcoming year?
The thing I would like to improve about my finances, I'm kind of teetering in on that business side. I've always worked for a big company. And even though I have my little LLC, I've never really been as serious about it as I should. So I would like to invest a little more in my business and even just come up with, the business model that I think works best for me. So, going from being an employee to owning your business, I know it's a big jump and I know I need to invest a little more in that.
Okay, so what's the action item that's going to help you get there? I know I keep telling you I'm done, but
yeah, the action
gotta have some accountability here.
So I set up the LLC. So I did that. I think that I'm probably going to have to sit down and actually write out maybe like the 3 things that I want to accomplish with my business or that I want my business to be known for.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, and now I got another quick answer. But the most tangible things is that I am working towards these two financial credentials, a CFP and an AFC. So I do plan to have both of those by the end of 2022, and I'm currently one of them I will have in April, the other one I will have in November, and they both require some rigorous some rigorous studying and all of that. So that is probably the most tangible things that I'm going to do. And again, I just believe that that's going to make me a much better messenger, practitioner, content creator, by going through the process and really filling in any gaps or holes that I have in my knowledge, so that I can just again just be a better messenger.
Amen. I love it. And as someone who has earned both the AFC and the CFP, I
Yes,
know what you're
I'm right
going
behind
through.
you, girl.
I know the struggle. Yes, you will be better for it on the other side, for having improved your knowledge, your expertise, and you're going to be able to help so many people because of it. So I am proud of you. You're standing on the podium now. We are at the finish line. This is your time to shine. Go ahead and shout yourself out. Tell us where we can find you, how we can support you. This was amazing.
Okay, well, thank you, Lauryn. And it was an honor to speak with you, because I do know that you have your ASC and your CFP. And as I had mentioned before we even got on, you were the first Black female CFP I have ever known. You introduced me to this field, this industry. But for me, I'm on all the social media channels, but I do like Linktree, because I just put everything there. But it's just linktree.com and then /money letters. And it's money letters because that is the book I wrote to my daughter as a gift before she graduated from high school. So that's just Linktree and then /money letters. Everything is there on my social media channels. You can look at all my other content and things like that. But I would love to connect. And Lauryn, thank you so much for having me today.
Jackie, thank you so much for being on the show.